to govern the world that we live in. And amongst these laws, he's going to focus subhanahu wa ta'ala on the law of righteousness or haqq, and what that's going to mean to us as Muslims, as that's something that we have to observe. And I find it interesting that that's how the Quran looks at these things. I mean, the Quran sees that the laws that need to be respected first are the laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to govern the world. Those laws have to be observed and respected. Those sunan are what we have to be aware of, and we have to make sure that we use them and utilize them appropriately. Before we talk about the laws of fiqh and usul al-fiqh and whatnot, you have to observe the actual laws, the laws that everything in the world follows and listen to. And I think that's a very healthy way to look at the world around us. And as Muslims, we may have lost touch with that just a little bit. And that's what the Quran does. The Quran goes through a lot of these laws on a constant and recurrent basis. How many verses have you read in the Quran that talk about water coming from the sky, and then life coming from the earth, and then life dying, and then going back into the earth, talking about the movement of the sun and the moon, and the movement of water, and the existence of mountains, and the existence. He keeps on using these things that are obvious, right? They're obvious. Well, they are obvious, but how obvious are they really? We tend as people to take for granted things that we constantly see. That's how we are. If something's always there, we just tend to take it for granted and not really contemplate it or reflect upon it or even learn anything from it, because it's just always there, even though that thing that's always there is probably the most important phenomenon that we have to see. As children growing up, you take for granted that you have a family, you have parents, you have a house just to live in, and it's warm at night, and there's food on the table. You take that for granted, and you don't really think, and what you end up realizing when you're older, all of that was extremely important. It was very, very significant and very meaningful. And not having that could have been very easy. You could have easily grown up without any of those things. Life would be very, very different altogether. So it's a trait that we all carry, where we just don't notice the things that are always there. We take them for granted. We become entitled and we move along, and we don't really reflect upon them. And the Quran just keeps on pointing them out that no, these things are actually really important. Take time and look at them. They're there, yes, they're always there. But because they're always there, because they don't change, they're worthy of your time to reflect and contemplate. And they actually tell you about the laws that govern everything, even if you don't understand thermodynamics and you're not an astrophysicist, nor are you a biologist to understand all the detailed laws that govern everything. Just by a simple observation of how the world is, it tells you a lot about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about yourself, which is what these first 4 verses are, and they just kind of focus on that. So we'll recite the ayah number 4, and as we go along, the meaning will become clear, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل صنوان وغير صنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. So he continues subhanahu wa ta'ala within these verses. He says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ, and on earth, قِطَعٌ مُتَجَاوِرَاتٌ. قِطَع are pieces of land. And if you're ever in a plane and you look down and you're not over a metropolitan, you see land, you see how pieces of land are. They're little rectangles or maybe different shapes. But you see how little pieces of land are stuck beside one another. So قِطَعٌ مُتَجَاوِرَاتٌ, mujawirat, neighboring pieces of land. وَجَنَّاتٌ مِّنْ أَعْنَابٍ, and there are gardens of vineyards or vine or of grapes. وَزَرْعٌ, زرع is anything that grows from the earth. And so zara is various plants or various plantation. So he points out subhanahu wa ta'ala some things that are specific, and he uses terms that are generic to point out all types of plantation. So on earth there are pieces of land, pieces of neighboring land, and you see on them gardens of vine and various plantation. وَنَخِيلٍ, and palm trees. صِنْوَانٌ وَغَيْرُ صِنْوَانٍ, and the word صِنْوان is jama'. It's actually not muthanna. It's not the dual term. It's actually jama', and it's one of the few jumu' in Arabic that work that way. It's not that most of you care about that, but that's صِنْوَانٌ it's a form of plural. It's not talking about two things, as usually the form with alif nun at the end sound like it's just two things, but it's not here. It's actually jumu'ah. So nakhilun sinwan, al-sinwan, al-sinu are things that are united at some point. So here it's talking about having one root. So nakhilun sinwan, meaning palm trees that have the same root. Wa ghayru sinwan, and palm trees that stand alone, they don't have the same root. And if you're a farmer, you know that's how trees or plants function sometimes. Sometimes you'll find multiple trees, they all are gathered at the roots, and sometimes you stand alone. He's just pointing out subhanahu wa ta'ala here the variety and the biodiversity, which is what earth is. يُسْقَى بِمَاءٍ وَاحِدٍ. So saying all of these different pieces of land, you can identify them as different because the soil has different color, or what actually is growing on it is quite different. And there are gardens of vine and various plantation, and there are palm trees, some of them with one root, some of them with the separate roots. All of it is irrigated, bima'in wahid, the same water. We all knew that. My son, my 3-year-old probably understands that. It's very simple, but have you ever reflected on that? It's the same water that irrigates all of these, yet they come out so different. They look different. وَنُفَضِّلُ بَعْضَهَا عَلَى بَعْضٍ فِي الْأُكُلِ, and we make sure that they taste different. Some of them taste better than others. Like the stuff that you'd come from the ground, all taste the same. It's the same soil, and it's the same water. Yet you're going to get all of this variety, all of this diversity in terms of what it looks like, in terms of the species, the nature of this plantation, and then in the way that it all tastes. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ, indeed within that, لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, there are signs for those who have the ability who have intellect to understand, who can think about these things. What is it that you're looking for when you're seeing this stuff? It's the oneness of the origin is what you're seeing. You're seeing the oneness of origin, and yet the diversity of the outcome. And that points in the direction of La ilaha illallah. You can come to the conclusion of a creator. You can come to the conclusion of the oneness of a creator just by looking at the world, just by looking at what exists. Now, the other attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala require a long philosophical argument of understanding Tawheed. Meaning, if you understand Tawheed, technically, you will come to the conclusion of all of His attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll talk about that fi Asma'illah al-Husna probably in a few days, this upcoming week. You can come to these conclusions. It requires a very vigorous and sometimes difficult philosophical argument, but it's the only conclusion that you can come to once you understand, once you come to the conclusion of a creator, and you come to a conclusion that it's one creator. And this is what all the phenomena on earth are pointing in the direction of, which is why these verses exist. So if you think about what we've read so far, Alif Lam Mim Ra Tilka Ayatul Kitab, here are the verses of the book. That's the language that is used here. And what has been revealed to you from your Lord is the haqq, is the truth. It's righteous. There's no question about it. But a lot of people refuse to believe. Allah is the one who raised the cosmos, and there are no pillars that are holding it. This is not the law that holds the cosmos up. It's not pillar based like we do everything else here on earth. It's a whole different law that governs it. And he put the sun and the moon at your service. Both the sun and the moon continue to move and to rotate, and they're going to go to a specific destination of both time and space that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for them. He takes care of matters, Jalla Jalaluhu, and He details His signs for you, so that maybe you come to the conclusion of certainty that you will meet Him. And He is the one who has opened earth in front of you and put on it mountains that go deep into the earth as pillars. And upon it He put for you rivers. And from each type of fruit there are two pairs. As day is covered by night and night is covered by day, indeed within that you will find signs for those who would like to reflect. And upon earth you will see neighboring pieces of land, and upon them gardens of vine, and various plantation, and different palm trees that have one root or separate roots, and they are all irrigated by the same water. And yet they taste different, and some taste better than others. Indeed within that you will find signs for those who have an intellect. This is what the verses are talking about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing out, here are the laws that govern everything around you. That's why you're here. These are the laws that existed. So what is the verse after it? This is one of my favorite verses in the Quran. Let's read this one and you'll see why in a moment. وَإِن تَعْجَبْ فَعَجَبٌ قَوْلُهُمْ أَإِذَا كُنَّا تُرَابًا أَإِنَّا لَفِي خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ أولئك الذين كفروا بربهم وأولئك الأغلال في أعناقهم وأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. And وَإِن تَعْجَبْ, and if you want to be surprised, then be surprised by what they're saying. Like if you, وَإِن تَعْجَبْ, al-ajab is when you're in a state of being surprised of something. So it's telling the Prophet, Yo Muhammad, if you want to be surprised, well, be surprised of what they're saying. What they're saying, أَإِذَا كُنَّا تُرَابًا, when we become soil again, when we die and we go into the, and we're buried, and we're slowly taken up by the soil of the earth and eaten away, and within a couple of years, there's nothing really left of you inside of the grave. A decade later, there's absolutely nothing left inside the grave, and you can put another person in there. It's just a sign and a name on it of someone who once meant something to people in their lives. But there's no one actually down there anymore. They're gone. The earth absorbs us, even if you try to stop it by putting them in a coffin of wood or even in a coffin of cement. The worms find their way, and nothing is left of whatever it is you put down there. أَإِذَا كُنَّا تُرَابًا, when we turn back to the soil of the earth, أَإِنَّا لَفِي خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ, we're going to be resurrected and brought back. So the ayah is saying, you want to be surprised? Be surprised about what they're claiming, that it's impossible that we turn to earth and come back. When everything that you see, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. Everything turns back to soil, and then it comes out again with the diversity of creation. It's all the same water, but it comes out as vine, and it comes out as palm trees, it comes out various plantation. It all tastes different, looks different, just like us. We're all a little bit different. We look different. We have different backgrounds, but we're all coming from the. Why is it that you're used to a plant coming from the earth and it gives fruit and you eat it and then it dies and it goes back to the earth and then you irrigate again and it comes up again, and that's not weird to you? But yet, if I go back into the earth, it's impossible that I'll ever come back again. Why can't the same happen to you? What's the big differentiation here? What is it based upon? What is it based upon? It's just based upon the fact that you didn't see it happen. Well, you're seeing a billion other examples happen on a momentarily basis. If it wasn't happening, you wouldn't live. If this wasn't, imagine if you took water and you put it on the soil and nothing came out. What are you gonna do? You complain to Amazon? What are you gonna do? Return the soil? There's nothing. Who are you gonna take this to? You're putting water and sun and nothing's coming out of the earth. Now what? Nothing. Nothing. With all of the technological advances we have, nothing. We have absolutely nothing to offer. We have nothing we can do. If for some reason you irrigate Earth and no life comes from it, that's it. There's absolutely nothing you can do. We don't understand exactly why it is that these dried up, shriveled seeds will, once you give it water and light, it will grow. We understand how it does it. We've learned to describe it in some degree of depth in terms of how, but why it does it, like why it doesn't just not grow, that we don't know that piece. And science is not necessarily at all interested in that piece. It's the nature of science. Science doesn't care about why things do what they do. Science cares how things are done, and how it's happening, so that you can manipulate the process so you can get something for yourself that's maybe more beneficial. And that's important. But why? Allahu Alam. So the ajab is not, the ajab is qawluhum. The surprise is in what they're saying. إِذَا كُنَّا تُرَابًا أَإِنَّا لَفِي خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. When we turn back to the soil, well, how is it that we're going to be returned into a new creation? There's nothing ajab about that. Everything that you're reading points out that that's what happens all the time. And it happens to everything around you, so why wouldn't it happen to you? أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. Those are the ones who just disbelieve in their Lord. They have no belief. They have no acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأُولَٰئِكَ, and those are the ones who have the الْأَغْلَالُ فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ. Those are the ones who have the chains in their necks on the day of judgment. وَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ, and those are the ones who are the people of the hellfire. هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ, for all of eternity. Because they denied something that is dead simple and they see happen every single day. And it's the reason that they're able to survive. The reason that they're able to survive is that this happens every single moment. Things die and go back to the earth, and they're resurrected and they come up again, and they die again and go back to the earth, and they're resurrected and come up again. And this process is ongoing all the time. Why are you and I an exception for that? And we're not. And just like we lived today and we went back into the earth in a few years, we will be brought back again from the earth again to live and to experience what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store for us. He's just pointing out, Jalla Jalal, this is the laws. These are the laws that I put on earth for you. This is what exists around you. Do not be surprised the fact that that's what's going to come up next. Don't deny that. See, in science, or the way we look at the world, there's a difference between evidence and proof. There's a difference between evidence and proof. And they're not exactly the same thing. Hard proof is when you actually have the element or the incident that you want occurring right in front of you. Evidence is when you have the signs to tell you that this is what is going to happen, or this is what occurs, without having that physical piece of proof in your hands. And both elements are used in courts of laws, right? So really, if you want to understand how logic works, you have to talk to lawyers, and you have to watch a lot of lawyers try to argue their cases and bring forward to the court their different categories of evidence when they talk about things. Not all convictions that exist on earth come from pieces of proof, actual physical proof. A lot of it is evidence. There's something that you can conclude from what you're seeing here. When someone dies, right, and there's a knife lying there on the ground with blood on it, now that's not proof, because you didn't actually witness that knife going in and out of this person's poor body. But if that person has 12 wounds inside of them that fit that knife, and that knife has blood on it, that's evidence enough that this is what happened. And for you to say, for example, that yes, this knife killed this man is absolutely insane. No one would accept that. No one would say that's a good conclusion. Yes, the knife killed. Someone took, well, who took the knife? I don't know who it is. I know someone did it. Would it be acceptable for a prosecutor or for someone that the knife did it? The knife just got tired of its very boring life and decided to lunge itself into this person's body 12 times and then just gave up afterwards. That would be a dumb conclusion. No one would accept that. Someone did it. Just because you don't know who did it doesn't mean that someone didn't do it. You know for sure that someone did. These are simple evidence-based conclusions that we accept them all the time. We use them in our daily life all the time. Yet when we come and look at the universe, somehow we turn that piece off. I don't know what it is. When you come and look, when you zoom out, you turn it off. You know, keep it on and zoom out. Keep it on, keep it on. Same thing. What is all this? What is the system that you're seeing? Everything. Everything that he pointed out in these three ayat. The existence of the sun and the moon, and the movement of both of them, and the mountains and the rivers, and all of these pieces are necessary for the existence of life and the way that it exists today. If you were to remove any of them, any piece of this puzzle, life would not be here. Any piece, wallahi, anything at all. If the mountains weren't there, life wouldn't be here. If the rivers weren't here, life wouldn't be here. If the sun and the moon were not where they are, moving in the direction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for them, life would not be here. If the earth was not spread in front of us the way it was, if it was not neighboring pieces with different plantation, if there was no biodiversity, there'd be no life. If it was just one piece of, if just one plant that came out that made one thing, it was just sweet, life would not exist. You had to, without this diversity, and without the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set the system up, we wouldn't be here today. Life would have not evolved the way it did. It's impossible. It just wouldn't have happened. Everything in this world is just lined up exactly the way it needs to be lined up in order for us to be here. And then they say, oh no, we can't come back again. When ta'jab fa'ajabun qawluhum. To be surprised about this. Listen to this garbage. Turaban, once we're in the soil of the earth, are we going to come back again? Why not? Everything else does. Everything else does. You just don't want to accept something. There's a reason for it. Allahu a'lam what the reason is for the person, but there is one. You can see all of these ayat are just talking about His laws, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that govern the earth that we live on. Let's move on to the ayah after it. وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ قَبْلَ الْحَسَنَةِ وَقَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمُ الْمَثُلَاتِ وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَشَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَّبِّهِ إِنَّمَا أَنتَ مُنذِرٌ وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ. And as they say all of this nonsense, يَسْتَعْجِلُونَك, they are hastening you. Isti'jal is asking someone to do something quickly. And they're hastening you bis-sayyi'ah. Bis-sayyi'ah here is referring to punishment. They're hastening the punishment of your Lord. See, that's what Quraysh did when the Prophet ﷺ came and he started teaching them. They would say, if it's true, يعني فأمطر علينا وإذ قالوا اللهم إن كان هذا هو الحق من عندك فأمطر علينا حجارة من السماء أو ائتنا بعذاب أليم. They would come and say, if it's true, then Ya Rabb, send upon us rocks from the sky, or bring us severe punishment. And you find this all through the Quran, with the different nations that spoke to their prophets. They're hastening punishment. They're asking, well, bring us punishment. If this is true, bring us punishment. Why? Why would you, if it's true, why would you ask for وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ قَبْلَ الْحَسَنَةِ, before asking for that which is good, which is khayr, which is beneficial from their Lord. They're hastening punishment upon themselves instead of فَقَالُوا رَبَّنَا بَاعِدْ بَيْنَ أَسْفَارِنَا وَظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم. Surah 7, they would tell, Ya Rabb, make it worse for us. This is not bad enough. It's not bad enough. Make the journeys that we have even farther away from one place to the other. You know, the sarcastic rudeness that the human being can carry inside them when they don't like something. وَظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم فَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَحَادِيثَ وَمَزَّقْنَاهُم كُلَّ مُمَزَّقٍ. So we gave them exactly what they wanted, and with their kingdom and civilization was reduced to rubble, into nothingness. It can always be worse. If you're in a bad situation, just remember it can always be worse. Absolutely can be worse. There's no end to how bad things can be. The fact that we are used to always hoping for it to be a little bit better is just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I say, mdallilna. He spoiled us. He gave us way more than what we need, way more than what we deserve. So we have this now, this entitlement, and this is what we're used to. Things should always be better than what they are. Even though, if you look at the scale, there's an infinite number of ways for things to be worse, just like there's an infinite number of ways for things to be better. Why do we expect that we always have to be on this side of the scale? Why is it that we always have to be here? Even though that's not what He promised, and that's not what He pointed out, and that's not why we're here. We're not here to be on that side of the scale at all times. We're here actually to be tested and trialed on both sides, in a constant back and forth, and sometimes the seesaw is a little bit more on one side than the other. But for it to be an expectation of us, an expectation for us, I know that has to be the case. It's a big problem. It's an attitude problem. And that's why the يَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ, bring it on, they would say. قَبْلَ الْحَسَنَةِ وَقَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمُ الْمَثُلَاتِ. Mathulat is جمع مثلة. And مثلة is an example of something that happened before. And here it's referring to what happened to the nations that came before them. Meaning the Arab, they knew what happened to Ad, Qawm Hud. And they knew what happened to Thamud, Qawm Salih. And they knew what happened to Tubba' Malik al-Yaman. I mean, they knew these stories. They knew what happened to Abraha, who came to the Kaaba. They had seen, there are people from the army, by the way, who still lived and resided in Mecca. When Abraha came with his army, and Tayr al-Ababil were sent upon them, they didn't die. Again, we always assume that things happen instantaneously. So we read the surah, فأرسلنا عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول, that it happened like that they all died immediately. They didn't all die immediately. The Prophet ﷺ remembers Sa'iq al-Fil, the person who carried the rassan, or the rein of the elephant on that day, who lived in Mecca, and he was blind. يسأل الناس. He sat in a part of Mecca with his hand out, shahad. He was someone who was always asking people for handouts. He was extremely ill. Most of the people there were people who were still from the Arab saw them. The Arab witnessed what happened to them, and the people who came with that army resided in Mecca, ill and disabled and not able to do, and not capable of taking care of themselves. And يَتَصَدَّقُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ, they would give them food and just keep them alive until they passed away on their own. So this was not unheard to them. Like, they understood that punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed, that it was an option, that it could happen, that it happened before. So for them to go around and say, يَسْتَعْجِلُونَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ, give us the sayyah, bring it on, bring on punishment, is just very ignorant. When they should be hastening is the hasana, is the goodness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the punishment. Especially وَقَدْ خَلَتْ meaning, and it went before them. Khala, something happened in the past. مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, before them, al-mathulat, the examples of the nations. And then one of the pieces of the Quran that some scholars say, min arja ayat al-Quran. If you look up the word arja ayah fil Quran, the most hopeful ayah in the Quran, you get two or three options that the scholars historically have talked about. The first one, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا, obviously. And the second one will be this one here. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ. Indeed, your Lord is the one who possesses forgiveness for people when they perform acts of oppression. When they do dhulm, when they perform acts of oppression to themselves, or they perform acts of oppression towards others. Indeed, your Lord is the one who possesses forgiveness for them, which is why they weren't punished right off the spot. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't punish them when they made these claims to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's interesting, and if you have time and you want to read something, go to a book of Seerah and read during the period of negotiations when the Prophet ﷺ was having in-depth debates and discussions with Quraysh, and read what they used to tell him or say to him. And when you do, you'll be very, first of all, you'll be in awe of his patience, alayhi salatu wasalam, with the stupidity of some of the things that he was subjected to. You can only listen to nonsense for so long before you lose your temper. At the same time, it shows you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Halim, the one who is very passionate and very, very patient with his creation. Because the hastening of punishment, the asking, the entitlement and the asking of وَقَالُوا لَن نُؤْمِنَ لَكَ حَتَّى تَفْجُرَ لَنَا مِنَ الْأَرْضِ يَنْبُوعًا أو تسقط السماء كما زعمت علينا كسفا أو تأتي بالله والملائكة قبيلا أو ترقى في السماء ولن نؤمن لرقيك حتى تنزل علينا أو يكون لك بيت من زخرف. They start asking him, okay, we won't believe in you until you give us this list of miracles that you need to bring forward for us to accept you. وإن ربك لذو مغفرة للناس على ظلمهم. Indeed, your Lord is the possessor. When you put ذو something, the possessor of something. That's how it translates, wallahu alam, into English. لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ. They're the one who possesses forgiveness for people upon their acts of oppression. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَشَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. And indeed, your Lord is the one with the most painful of all punishments. It works both ways. When you understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you understand that there are two sides in terms of what we get regarding the way we behave. It's not just one thing. أمن العقوبة أساء الأدب. Whoever feels they're in safety from punishment, they will quickly lose their manners. When a child does not feel that there's any possibility of them being punished for a mistake, they don't have a lot of manners. And they'll grow up and they'll learn rudeness, and they'll learn to be disrespectful, and it kind of gets worse and worse because أمن العقوبة, they don't feel that there's any punishment that can come to them. That's how the human being is. This doesn't go away. We use it with children. We are no different. Not even a little bit. We test the laws of society on a daily basis. We test the laws of society every single day, multiple times. And the moment you find a loophole, or you find a part of that that's not regulated properly, you break every law. Unless those who don't are the ones who see the laws, which is why this is important in this surah, see the laws to have the source of them to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who see these laws to be sourced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't matter to them, because they're not holding themselves accountable based on people's regulations. They see themselves accountable to these laws through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, so they'll hold themselves to these laws regardless. They'll hold themselves to the consequences of these laws, whether people are watching or whether they don't. And that's why that's why Tawheed is important, and that's why it should be that's why it should have an effect on people's life. It doesn't very much because we don't think about things in that way anymore, but that's how we're supposed to think about it. But you know that if there's if there's any aspect of leniency within a law that governs the country or the city that we live in, then people will break that law every day. If there's no uquba, if there's no punishment and no one's standing there to catch you, then you don't care. You'll just break it every day. Any of you been to the Middle East before? Have you driven there? Have you driven in the Middle East and come towards a street light? They're just suggestions, basically. They're just a suggestion. Maybe it's red, maybe stop. People don't. They come up with their own laws because there's no one to hold them accountable. When there's no one to hold you accountable, you do whatever you want, unless you see the source of that law, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ He's stating for you how this works. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَشَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. He possesses forgiveness for those who oppress themselves, but he will severely punish as well. So listen, accept that as you move along, and think about that as you move along with your life, because you're going to be held accountable. Hopefully you'll find forgiveness, but you could easily be punished as well. وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, and the disbelievers will go ahead and they will say, لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Where are the signs? And this is the second piece. Where are the signs? Musa alayhi salam, he had his staff. Isa alayhi salam resurrected the dead and walked on water and did a lot of other stuff. Hud alayhi salam, Salih alayhi salam, they all came with something. Where is your ayah? They first hastened punishment to themselves. They were told that's not very smart. We're going to forgive you, but don't do that again. All right, where's his ayah? إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ. Exclusively all that you are, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're a munzir. You're a warner. You're someone who comes and warns. That's what you are. You're not here to provide them with whatever they want. This is not an open buffet. They don't come. I have no standing in asking for, oh, I'll believe in you if, but I need this or I need that. No, you don't need anything. What you need are the first 3 or 4 verses of this surah. I already gave you how to believe. I established for you all around you on an ongoing basis, miracles that continue to occur. They're right there in front of you. Observe them, and then you'll come to the conclusions that you need. You don't need anything else. You don't need me to break the laws that I made. That's basically what miracles were. Miracles were a break of the law, meaning the law that you're used to seeing, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give a prophet the ability to break that law. Water flows, it's liquid, not anymore. Here, I broke the law for you. Yeah. That's what it is. Things die, they don't come back. Yeah, we'll break that law and bring them back for you. Did it work historically? For most people, it didn't work that well. Didn't work that well. So the Quran is explaining, we tried this before. It doesn't really work. Actually, the way you're going to come to the conclusion of, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith of Imam Muslim and Abu Dawood and others, قال وإن كل نبي من قبلي أوتي من الآيات ما مثله آمن الناس أو ما بمثله آمن الناس. All the prophets before me, they were given signs with those signs that people would usually, find iman when they saw them. وإنما أوتيته كان وحيا من الله. And what I was given was wahi, was revelation from Allah. وإني أرجو أن أكون أكثرهم تابعا يوم القيامة. And I'm hoping that on the Day of Judgment, because of that, I have the largest number of followers. Because what I was given wasn't an extraordinary physical phenomenon, something that broke the laws that everyone observed. Actually, something that was going to get you to observe the laws that are, instead of breaking them. Here's what they are. These laws are actually miracles on their own. Their existence, their consistency, the fact that they work. What is the probability of a child actually being born? A probability outside of understanding how the biology works. It's less than 0.004 that a child actually comes out normal, because of the amount, because of the possibilities of different mutations that can occur from the moment the sperm and the egg meet. Because when you watch the actual process, it can go wrong so many times in so many ways from the moment that the sperm and the egg meet until the child actually comes out of the belly of the lady alive. This can go wrong so many times in so many ways. Now, and that's for us to observe as creatures that don't have control or sovereignty over what's occurring. This is impossible. Like, if you're watching it and you're understanding what's occurring, this should work once every million people. One child should be born normal. Everyone else will be a miscarriage of some musibah that happened on the inside, because it's just too complicated. Because how is this all working? How is it working properly? From where is it going? The only way to look, is it intelligent? It's not. They're just small cells. And how do they choose? Like when the cells differentiate cells that will turn into placenta and then cells that actually turn into you, how do they decide? There are no meetings occurring on the cellular level. They look, there's no difference. They're exactly the same. They took these cells. They shouldn't have, but they did. They took them and they looked, okay, there's no difference. They're absolutely the same. And then some of them will differentiate into a placenta and then be sloughed off and thrown into and others will turn into myself. And then when the cells that are me, the one that will turn into my ear and my liver and my kidney, absolutely no difference. Absolutely no difference at all. Exactly the way they can't find anything. They call them stem cells and they take them and they just use them, put them here and see what they'll grow into. But we don't know why. Why is it that they're differentiating that way, and how is it that they actually do all that? And where do they get this? And you look at cells that all look the same. Why do these ones have this magical ability to turn into something that is talking, speaking, walking, capable of metacognition and higher intellect? Well, not me, maybe, but everyone else may, inshallah. But when you look at these things, we don't have an explanation for it. We don't understand why. And not only that, it's just, there's something, لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه, they're saying. Where is the sign from their Lord? You need signs? You need more than this. You don't need more than this. That's why he was told, إنما أنت منذر. All you need to do, you're exclusively, your job is to warn them. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. And every nation will find a guide, will find a way to guide themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes sure that every nation, وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ, every group of people, had some hadin or hadi, someone that will guide them, and something that will guide them. And for us, it's that. We'll read inshallah 2 more verses and then we'll let you go. الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد. وكل شيء عنده بمقدار. عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال. سواء منكم من أسر القول ومن جهر به. ومن هو مستخف بالليل وسارب بالنهار. Allahu ya'lam. Allah, and these are beautiful verses, and they serve very nicely the purpose of what we're doing on weekday mornings with His glorious name, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a continuation. It goes back to the laws again. Allahu ya'lamu ma tahmilu kullu untha. Allah knows what every female is carrying inside its womb. وَمَا تَغِيضُ الْأَرْحَامِ, and what decreases or what lessens within the wombs of females and turns into a miscarriage. وَمَا تَزْدَادُ, and what increases and then turns into a functioning human being. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ, and everything for him, regarding him, and everything for him subhanahu wa ta'ala. كُلُّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ, as far as he's concerned, everything بِمِقْدَار, has a precise amount, and it has a certain degree of an appointed amount of space, appointed amount of time, an appointed amount of provision. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَار. Everything it's assigned a specific amount. There's a certain slither of existence that is going to be assigned to them when it comes to space and time and provision and everything else that comes with it. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ, everything, even things, وَمَا تَغِيض. This ayah is saying تَغِيضُ الْأَرْحَامِ. تَغِيض, when something decreases, meaning there's a miscarriage. You wonder, well, why is there, even that, even when a lady carries for a day or two and then it comes out and she doesn't even notice that it came out and it was once, even that, عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَار. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows about it, and it was given a certain slither of existence that it was going to have. Even the things that you think are pointless, even the existence of something that to you is pointless, meaning why did it happen to begin with? Either live or not live, either be or don't be altogether. What is this point? What is even that? يَعْلَمُ مَا تَحْمِلُ كُلُّ أُنْثَى. He knows what every female carries. وَمَا تَغِيضُ الْأَرْحَامِ, and when the wombs get smaller and the miscarriage happens and nothing comes out that's liable. وَمَا تَزْدَادُ, and what actually reaches fruition. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ, absolutely everything, عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَار, as far as he's concerned, has a precise amount, miqdar, that is assigned to it. It will get that and it will move on. عَالِمُ الْغَيْبِ, He is the knower of that which is the unseen. عَالِمُ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ, and the seen. They're the two existences, the unseen, the aspect of existence that we don't have access to, and the seen, shahada, which is what we have access to. عالم الغيب والشهادة, He knows both. Al-Kabir, the great, the all great, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Muta'al, the supreme, the one with supreme status. سواء منكم, it is equal to Him amongst you. من أسر القول, those who speak secretly and keep their voices down. ومن جهر به, and those who speak openly and publicly. وَمَنْ هُوَ مُسْتَخْفٍ بِاللَّيْلِ, and those who walk around quietly at night trying to keep a low profile. وَسَارِبٌ بِالنَّهَارِ, and those who are swimming within the day. Sarib, someone who is moving in a visible manner to those around them. Makes no difference to him. You say it secretly, you say it publicly, you move quietly in the night when no one sees you, or you walk openly in the day when everyone does. It makes no difference to him. It's all the same. He sees all of it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. كُلْ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَارٍ. And it'll all be brought back on the Day of Judgment because He is Al-Kabir, Al-Muta'al, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalla Jalaluhu. We'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala, and we can continue the tafsir of Surat Al-Raad, inshallah ta'ala, next Saturday. Subhanallah bihamdik, shanu la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala sayyidina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah.